You are listening to the Global CTE Podcast with your host, Sylvester Chisholm.
Welcome, everyone, to the Global CTE Podcast. We have a phenomenal episode in store for you. I'm Sylvester Chisholm, your host, and this is the place where we really want to wrap a blanket of goodwill around our career tech education community and highlight people who are doing amazing work in the space, the best, the brightest, the movers, the shakers, the innovators, and today is no different. I have my good friend here with me, Kelly Ryan Bailey. Now, let me tell you about Kelly. Kelly is an entrepreneur, speaker, advisor, investor, and mama of three. She's the founder and CEO of Skills Baby, the home of her podcast, Let's Talk About Skills Baby and Got Skills. She is on a mission to change the world through life skills. Kelly believes we learn skills throughout all our life experiences, not only formal work and education experiences. She's a true global thought leader and is a co-founder of World in 2050, a think tank aimed at solving the world's biggest problems. Her nearly 20-year professional journey has focused on building and advising startups, creating talent ecosystems between companies, educators, and governments, fostering innovative skills-based hiring and learning technology solutions, enabling organizations to build more equitable hiring practices, and evangelizing skills as the currency of the labor market. Kelly is committed to empowering individuals and organizations to find fulfilling ways to work and live. I'm so excited to have you here. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sylvester. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. I have really been looking forward to this conversation with you. Your work around skills touches so many different spaces. You're all over the world. You're connected with so many organizations and thought leaders. So your perspective is amazing. Now I know that's the work you're doing today, but like, how did you get here? Like, what's your origin story?
Well, to be honest, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So my dad owned his own dental practice, and my mother was working for Avon Products. So she was actually managing a group of Avon ladies, if you will. That's what they called them back in the day. So I don't know what the PC term is today, but really, honestly, what led me here today is I just was always trying to figure out how to financially provide for my family. Being a young mom of three kids, not having a typical Ivy League education, and just closed a lot of doors. There were just not a lot of opportunities for me to go through like a corporate path. And I always had these side hustles, like starting businesses was kind of a passion of mine just because I grew up in that environment. And so I'd be like, you know what, it's okay. We need to, make some more money because like my daughter needs this type of thing because she's neurodiverse. And so like she needed a lot of special things. And I'd be like, it's fine. I'm going to open up an online boutique and we're going to make an extra $1,000 a month so that, we can make ends meet. And that was really what led me to where I am today, was just like trying to figure it out without a plan in place, if that makes sense.
No, totally. And I love I read it in your bio, how you talk about you believe in the skills that are acquired through living life and exploring and the adventures that life creates. I want to go back to that moment. You just said something. Dad's an entrepreneur, owns his own dental practice. What was one of your first businesses that you had? Mom's an Avon lady. Like, I'm sure there was something.
I did. I was a babysitter, and what I did was, back then there was, and I think there's still popular books to this day. There were this book, series called The Babysitter's Club. And the Babysitters Club was like a group of young girls. There was a president, it was just like what you would imagine a formal club, like a president, a treasurer, a secretary, and they were all babysitters. And so I started my own babysitting club. I realized that, it was one of those, like reading those books, having that inspiration, like, wow, I think if I'm really good at organizing and I'm really good at getting enough babysitting jobs that are more than I can handle on my own. Why not have a group of babysitters that are all going out there? And again, always I was thinking of a way to like make extra money, right? So it was like, I can make the money of doing my own babysitting, but now I can make money when I book these other babysitters to go on jobs too.
Now hold on. Now how old are you when you're doing this babysitting thing?
I was like 11.
I think it's so like it's like one thing, like hats off to you and your parents. And I love this like it's one thing to say I'm going to babysit like myself, but you took it like another step further, and I feel like I hear some of that Avon approach in your babysitting
Totally.
strategy there.
I used to go, I mean, like I would go to work with my mom. So I would go to women's houses and hear her tell them the story of like these women. Again, I like, so at the time I didn't realize that I would so appreciate being with these women, that are mothers that are trying to figure out how to make extra money while their kids are in, but like around their kids' schedule, right? So they could still be mamas, like awesome mamas at home, but they also wanted to, make extra money. And that was the way they were doing it. And so my mom would sort of like be talking with them about how they do it. And it was just little things that I recognized. And I also was selling Avon as well. That was one of the ways that I made extra money. And the little things that I learned through that was like, and I took that all into babysitting too. Like I had these shoe boxes that we would decorate with like our babysitters club. And we would put all these like crafts and things in there for the kids. And it would be like something special that we would bring for each kid. And then that box like stayed with them. And that's what I used to do with like the Avon products. When I would go to someone's house, I'd actually have like a box of all these products that I could show women and like help them put their makeup on.
Yeah,
And it just like, you just figure out how things, what you learn from, right? And so but all of it always to figure out how to just like make extra money. My family wasn't, they were like middle of the way, like I guess we were what would be called like, middle class-ish, right? But
what city?
my
What
parents,
city? What city? From where? Where were you at? What city?
so I grew up in, oh my gosh, no one knows where Long Valley, New Jersey is, but basically Northwest New Jersey.
Northwest
It
New
is
Jersey.
in, yeah, it's kind of, it was like farmland that was basically brand new housing. So about 2.5 hours outside of New York City, like to the northwest side of New Jersey. And so, but my parents just really believed in like making your own way, even at a young age. So we could like make money doing chores. We could make money working at my dad's dental office. We could make money if we wanted. I played basketball. If I wanted basketball shoes, like the Air Jordans were like the deal. If I wanted those, I had to save up money and buy them for myself. That was just my parents' way of like bringing us up to be like independent, children. And I just actually really appreciate it.
I think that is so powerful. Um, Creating those opportunities for exploration in our kids, bringing them in the fold to like show them our work, like just learning by like just being around, like you're picking up things, you're hearing conversations, you're seeing how people operate. My mother was the same way. Like she owns a hair salon. So it's like a little boy, I'm like
Yeah.
5 years old in the salon, answering the phone or walking ladies to their car like I was security or something. I don't know what I was doing, but from that, the spirit of customer service, of like um, you know, those things, communication, being a part of a team, seeing those things early on are really, it's so funny how like today those are the intangible skills that really make a difference that companies are looking for and that sort of thing. So let's fast forward. How do you go from there to like Skills Baby? Like, tell me more about like Skills Baby. What prompted that? And I love the podcast too, by the way.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I mean, I would say a little, I'll give the quickest version of the story as possible, because it was sort of a few things that led up to the moment where I was like, this has to be a conversation that we're having, and I'm going to do this podcast. But what happened was like I said earlier, as you might imagine, based on my parents' upbringing, I was, my parents wanted me to go to school, to college, but I had to pay for it. And so when I was going through school, I was a working student, even though I was a typical age student. And it was that moment where you sort of like, what am I going to do? Right? How am I going to make ends meet, but like have a fulfilling life? Like, you have all these hopes and dreams right at that age. And when I graduated, it was sort of a like, whoa moment, like I couldn't even make enough money to afford to live in my own apartment. I had to move back home. And then all of the jobs that, even though I had a bachelor's degree, all of the jobs that I was getting, like I just, even within the first few years of my career, like there was like no movement at all. And and now in retrospect, I look back and maybe I had thought there was going to be forward progression faster, as you do when you're a young person, but it was a good 5 years. And I was like, come on now, and I just, it was frustrating. And one of the jobs that I happened to have was with a subsidiary of Randstad. And that was a staffing firm. And I got to work with a group of global banks in New York City to help them staff their technology teams. And so I got an inside peek at what was happening in the hiring system in companies. And it dawned on me that I was like, wow, there are so many things that are broken that are actually causing barriers for people like me, and anyone else. Like, I was like, I'm privileged in the whole sense of this. And if I'm having trouble, I couldn't even imagine how many other, I mean, of course, like mothers were the first on my mind, because like we are really trying to support, like it's our children, right? Like we're mama bears. We want to make sure that we're doing all the right things for them. But I couldn't help but think, even people that I was bringing forward for these potential consulting jobs or even full-time jobs, they wouldn't have gotten that opportunity unless I manually made the connections, unless I manually helped them create a resume that would go into this company's HR system and pass through all of the technology. We often call that the black hole, right? When you just like apply to a job online and like nothing ever happens. If I wasn't there supporting the whole process, like these people would have never gotten through in a million years. And that just kind of made me mad, and also kind of made me wonder, like, could we actually fix some of these things that are causing these problems? And that led me into moving into the startup world. And moving into the startup world was, I sort of stumbled upon it because I was, again, a young mother. I was commuting 2.5 hours each way into New York City for this job that I could not do and actually be like a present parent. And I happened to be headhunted by a startup really near where I lived. And I was like, oh my gosh, not only did they want to tackle some of these problems, which I was like, yeah, but they were close to home and I could still be a mom and like do my work that I loved, because I actually loved trying to figure out ways to make this better for people. I, on the side, would help other moms that were looking for part-time work or what we now call gig work or work from home things. I would help them with their resumes, making introductions because of the connections that I had built through this staffing world, And then I would also help them craft these resumes that would go into these systems, like get through the black hole of the AI of these systems. And so that all just sort of led me to a place where I had been working on solving these problems. And like you said, skills was just like such a big answer to me. You know, the systems weren't set up to understand who we were as a unique, like highly talented person, right? Not only me, all of these people, they weren't set up to understand that you were learning these things by being a mom. You know, you were learning these things in life, not necessarily from your degree, not necessarily from the jobs you had. Maybe they were volunteer experiences, maybe they were your side hustles, right? Like all the different things. It just to me was this huge missing part of the equation. And then this moment happened, and I say like a catalytic moment in my life that really made me feel like I have to start saying something out loud, because what was happening in my personal life and what was happening in my business life like didn't fit. What everyone knows today after COVID, I'm like, we all know now that like we're living out loud as parents, right? But I was like living that dual life of like, I have to hide what's happening in my personal life and be like business over here. And I was like, I think we need to stop doing that and talk about it like it's all intertwined. And that's really what led me to the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's so that's so true. Like, I feel like everything that you do in your life that you spend time with, like, makes you who you are. And so if you don't have to separate those things, then I feel like you should find a way to integrate them. Someone once told me, like, it's not about work-life balance, but it's work-life integration. Like, how
Yes.
can they, you know, a little work, little play, little work, little family, you know, like, how do you fuse it? Are there ways to fuse them together? I'm curious. I want to ask you something, because you interview a lot of thought leaders on your podcast around the skills that people are looking for, or companies are looking for now. What are you hearing? Like, what are some of the top things that are trending in terms of skills that companies are looking for or hiring for?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, you know, trending skills from a technology perspective change and adjust all the time, right? Because we have new technologies coming out. What I might say today could look different within a year, right? I mean, even we all saw in the pandemic where all of a sudden, I mean, everyone needed to know all these different technologies that may have not been part of their work, right? So I often say that what is always going to be needed, no matter what, are what I say are life skills, or as you heard me say before, like I say they're formally known as soft skills, because really they're not soft at all, right? They're actually the hardest skills to learn. Those are the skills like that you described in your mom's beauty parlor, right? Like the empathy that your empathy meter is probably super high because you were around people like that, right? You were like seeing what facial expressions meant, right? When women would like, because inevitably it's like a therapy session when you go get your hair done, right? So it's like, you just hear them talking. And so those types of skills, these life skills are actually built in the trenches of life. Like they are built through hard times. They are built through, for me, it was going to work with my parents. The fact that our lives were not separate when it came to that. Today, people might have been like, oh my gosh, like my kid needs to have all of these activities. And like, I couldn't even possibly think to like have them be in a room with me while I'm working. Anything that anyone chooses to do the way as a parent is totally fine and a-okay with me, because like, it's totally fine, but it's not, none of it is bad, right? Like if my son came into my office last night, he's 7 years old, and he was like, Mom, oh, I'm so stressed. I've got to make $1 million today. And I was like, what?
Are you serious?
And it's because he like listens to me, or he'll come in and be like, Mom, I have this idea for your business, because he'll listen to my calls.
I love it. but it's the same thing that was happening with you and your parents. Now you have that was a very advanced move for you to say, I'm going to babysit, but also create a babysitting team where I'm going to source the work and divvy it out. I think that's so interesting. Now you have a 7-year-old who's like, hey, we have to do $1 million today. Like, what's going on?
I
What's going on here?
but honestly though, those skills, those life skills, things that you described before that you learned in the beauty parlor with your mom, right? Those are all the skills that never are not needed by potential employers. Those are the skills that make us as a person stand out, that make us able to solve the creatively solve the problems of the world, right? Like those are the skills, but they aren't the ones that are normally talked about, right? Like all you ever hear about is those technical skills.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's I just had my friend Stephanie on from America Succeeds, and
Yes.
they talk about durable skills, and it's such an interesting
Mhm.
thing. They ran they had a research report done on like 80 million job postings and highlighted the most requested skills. And there was things like what you're saying, like the empathy, the communication, the collaboration, not soft skills because they're not soft, but these durable skills that whether we learn them in our household, we learn them at school, we learn them in a job, or through sports, whatever the case may be, through living life, those are the things that really can take us to the next level for sure. Kelly, I want to switch the conversation just a little. I know you're an advisor for Bast AI, so let's talk a little artificial intelligence, okay? And how skills are linked, like what's happening there. I saw this thing, the World Economic Forum, their future jobs report said that AI is expected to replace 85 million jobs worldwide by 2025. I know that's scary to a lot of people, especially our audience of educators, but it's also said that it's going to create like nearly 100 million new jobs in the same time frame. So like, what are you thinking? What are the skills that like our education system should be preparing students for?
Yeah.
Your
Well,
thoughts on it?
interestingly enough, I think when organizations use the word, because we often hear about the jobs that it's going to replace, and then that sort of comment that the new jobs that it's going to create. Well, in actuality, it's just transitioning the jobs. Like it's just changing the jobs as opposed to like completely getting rid of jobs. If it's getting rid of anything, it's getting rid of tasks, repetitive tasks that we don't want to do. The founder of Bast AI in particular, she describes when she talks about AI, she really talks about how it can augment so many facets of our life personally and professionally. And that's really when I think about what this is going to do to the way that we work and the way that we are able to, let's say, like, handle our household. It should actually make it easier, right? Like it should make parts of our life that we don't want to necessarily do, should make it easier. And the skills, surprisingly enough, that are important are actually the same skills that we've already been talking about. And I know that sounds very strange, right? Because most people will say, well, wait, what about all the technical skills? Well, here's how it works. Automated intelligence has to be trained. And the person who is training the automated intelligence, their personal and sometimes unconscious biases are built into the technology. So whatever I think and feel is likely the way that I would have trained any AI that I interact with, because I want it to have the answers given back to me that I want. as opposed to the answers that someone else might want. And so interestingly enough, being able to creatively problem solve, being able to think outside of the box, being able to understand people and their needs, and understand their underlying feelings is actually quite important in building in this technology. And so all of the technology skills related to being able to actually be part of building AI are one thing, right? But then actually being able to use it in the way that your role might change is a totally different thing. You have to learn how to interact with it, how to talk to it. How does it, what kind of questions do you ask it for optimal response? What kind of information are you giving it to learn how to respond back? So in the case with AI related to education, and in particular higher education, a lot of the things that there are so many different facets of discussion of how this will integrate into education. So, an AI is being used in so many cases, just under the surface of so many things. So I think in the ways that it'll be innovative and change will be, we all have been getting used to the chat, right? Especially with chat GPT coming out onto and the thing is that, again, there's sort of two parts to this. If you've interacted with that in any way, you will know that you have to learn how to ask it the right questions, right? Because you could ask it one question one way and the same question another way and get sometimes the same answer, sometimes a different answer, right? Like you have to know. The other thing about this is that you have to know what inherent biases are in the system to know and understand what answers you're getting. And that really leans back into this like ethical AI or transparent AI. That is something that I truly care about, that Vast AI truly cares about, and anything that I do from an AI perspective is a big focus for me. Because if we don't understand what data it's been trained with, who has been training it, why it's giving these answers, we can just take the answer at face value. And then we can make a major life decision based on that answer.
No, that's and also if you scale that out, then you're like that's the information that's being shared and scaled across those particular questions. Like you said, those biases become reinforced from that. I'm curious, like, what do you think about? I love how you mentioned like with Chat GPT, and one of the skills that is like a new skill is, I would like to say, like prompt engineering, almost like how do you ask the right questions and that to get the answers to get high quality answers that you're looking for from AI. I think that's something that's new that I found, like, and I love that you just highlighted that.
It's totally new. And I love how you named it because it's so true. I think the ways that could actually probably be a whole conversation in and of itself, like how to ask the questions. And, I think the most simplest ways is experiment. That is the easiest thing for me to say for anyone who's listening today is experiment with different questions. Ask the same question different ways. And know, please know to not necessarily take that answer at face value. Like, where did that answer come from? Did Chat GPT pull it from Wikipedia, right? Because there is so much content available online. Like, how do we then trust that content? Like, those are the kinds of things that you need to think about when you're interacting with that information. So that's the part that I would say is the easiest without me going into like a full training.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm going to come back to the equity in AI. I'm curious for like maybe our educators listening who want to sprinkle this into their curriculum to teach skills around maybe AI. Like, what would anything tactical you would have for them?
Oh my God. So for students,
yes.
Oh my gosh, this is the easiest one. This is the one that I love and I use all the time. And I've actually heard being used in even elementary schools, but this is for any age level. Most people at this point have like an Instagram, right? Or you can like pick your social media flavor, but I like it the best on Instagram. Okay. What determines what you see in your feed?
The algorithm, right? Like
Yeah.
in what you're clicking on, what you're watching,
Right. Right.
what you're liking, commenting.
And who controls what you see?
Instagram or the social media platform. No. Okay. You control it. Okay.
I control what I see. I
Okay.
control what I see, right? Because this is the best experiment ever. So when I had a massive burnout back in 2016,
Okay.
I was depressed. I couldn't get out of bed. Like, I'm not even joking. It was awful. And just like many people do when they're having a moment, I would scroll Instagram. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me that I was like, oh my gosh, after I scroll my Instagram feed, I'm sadder. Like, what? And so what I did was I was like, what if I could scroll my Instagram feed and be happier? And I was
Okay.
like, huh. So what I did was I looked at, who am I following? What are they posting? Is it making me happy or sad? Do I want to follow them? Did I just follow them because I was trying to win some contest? Right. Because we all do it.
Right.
And then when I start to see ads, yes, Instagram is suggesting those ads based on what you're interacting with, right? But I can block those ads. I can tell it what ads I don't want to see. I can tell it to say, I don't want suggested things. I can make it what I want it to be. And that to me is like the easiest experiment and way to understand AI from any level, from any age group, is to change the way your Instagram feed shows up to you.
Yeah, that is such a great activity, and it really touches also on like the whole social emotional learning element with what you just said. Like you took a moment to be self-aware to say, am I happier or am I or like am I sad? Like, and why? Well,
Yeah.
it's because this reinforcement of, oh, if this is going to keep Kelly on the platform longer, keep showing her this stuff. But I love the taking ownership of it and saying, no, I am in control of what I want to see and understanding the rules of how this works. So let me
Yeah.
re-engineer what
And
I'm
that's
like.
such an easy, like, introductory way to playing with AI. And remember, like, all the AI that's coming into our life at this moment, right? Like, a lot of us have a Google Home or an Alexa, right? All of those things. I mean, if you listen to any kid ask, we have an Alexa. If you listen to any kid ask a question, right? Like, I mean, I won't even get into it because they ask them super silly questions, but
Right.
ask Alexa to tell you a scary story. Ask Alexa to tell you a funny story. There and remember, like, when I ask Alexa to play me happy music. And Alexa is going to play happy music based on my listening preferences. Now, if I have been one time I asked it to play me happy music and I was like, what are these songs? And then I remembered, oh, right, my 14-year-old is also asked, like, it's hearing all of the listening preferences. But essentially, the goal of all of this is to help individuals understand that they have control. And so those are the best examples to me.
No, I think that's a good one. And I like the version that you offered is highlighting how we're already working with AI in the background of a lot of products and tools that we use, where this chat GPT thing it's so like in your face, like, oh, ask it to do this and it's gonna do some work project for you. But in the line with what you just said, I was watching an interview with the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, and he was talking about how one of the big trends he sees going forward is that like AI is going to be the co-pilot to
Yes.
empower us to do more, right?
Yes.
And it's interesting how we can ask Alexa to do something, but we can also ask like Chat GPT to give us an outline for an article topic, or to revise something or reword something, or help with brainstorming with that
Yep.
machine. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on what are your thoughts on like Chat GPT and going into education and all that stuff?
Well, I think, again, I think that what is available from an open perspective doesn't necessarily work across the board in every potential scenario, right? Because like Chat GPT in and of itself is sort of this thing for all use cases, right? But if I stick it in an environment where I want it to be the chat between potential students and my university, it will have to be trained with the correct kind of information to be able to interact that way. So I think of anything related to AI that's open source as like an initial playground. And then if you're bringing it into your educational environment, know that you will have to put your own finishing touches on it. You will, and that takes time, because there's just, it's not even about, it used to be about the amount of data that you were training these systems with, but now it's really more about the types of interactions you want it to have. It does not take a mass amount of data. That the founder and CEO at Bast, she will often give you a list of like what AI is good at and what humans are good at. And
what's on that list? I want to hear.
I know, what I'll do is I will send you,
yeah.
I don't have it in front of me, but I will
Okay.
send you a copy of the list. But essentially, like, AI is really good at like answering a lot of math equations really fast, right?
Right.
AI can't creatively think about a bunch of things. They can think of it as almost we're like 3D and AI is like 2D, right? The way that it sees the world is just different than the way that our human brain sees the world. But on the plus side, there are things that it is better than us at. And in those cases, we should be leaning on that to augment us, just like Sasha said, like be our co-pilot, so that we can like maintain better work-life balance or life balance, right?
100%. Yeah, I think I really feel like that's where we are for the immediate future. Is like, how can AI be the co-pilot? How can it supercharge your work?
Yeah.
So I think that's
if I was a
important.
teacher or professor, right, I'd be like, how can I use this to make me better at my job? Like that's what I would think of it as. How can I make this situation better for my students, right? That's how I think of AI. It's not like to get rid of you. It's not to get rid of something. It is to take something that is a automated thing and help that work better and faster, and that helps you be able to focus on the human things.
100%. I think the big human things, like what we continue to go back to, is how is empathy applied in that, critical thinking, the analytical thinking of what are the best questions to ask, or those sort of things. And I do see like new jobs being created in what you were talking about, from this equity in AI piece, like really being deeply concerned about the information we're training AI on, and some of those biases, and recognizing those things.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us, as we're starting to use AI to augment our lives and our work, think through who built that, right? Like, and I know sometimes you could go down a rabbit hole, but let's, from a diversity perspective, let's look at the majority of individuals that are the ones that are actually on the technical side doing this stuff. Okay. I think we have to really remember that, because if it is a bunch of, sorry, everybody, if it's a bunch of white men, then their perspective on life, and it's a bunch of white men from Ivy League schools, right? That even narrows the slice of what their perspective on life is. So just like we describe how we need diverse minds to innovate, to solve problems, like there's a lot of reasons why diversity is important in everything we do. And it is just the same in building these technologies, because this technology, that's why I say empathy and understanding of people is so important, because if the people that are building these things don't have those sets of skills, don't have life experiences that look like us on the ground, then that's not going to be the technology that's built.
I love it. And that's you're starting to hear more and more that conversation become louder and louder of who built this, where these answers coming from, like what narratives are.
Who's talking about it, right? Like I actually posted something on LinkedIn with all of these women experts in AI, and their voices aren't being heard. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, we have to look at who's talking about it. Who are we learning from? Who's behind the scenes, right? Who's the Oz behind the curtain, right?
How do you, what are your thoughts on that? Let me stay there for a minute. How do you think we can lift up more diverse voices in this AI equity conversation?
Oh man. I mean, I think it has to start with people questioning, right? I was always one of those kids that probably annoyingly questioned everything, right? Like, well, who made that rule? Who said this is the way that it had to be? Who said that a father had to be the head of a household? Like things that were societally acceptable, I always questioned. And we have to start questioning God, like everybody. If you're sitting around a room and you notice that everyone around that room looks like you and you're about to go out and solve a major world problem, like think for a second. Think about what that looks like. And I think we all have to start to stop, look around us, see who that is, and how can we find the voices? There are plenty of people out there, and I'm happy to provide at least some like initial lists of diverse voices around this particular topic, but I think we need to start gathering them. And it's actually something that our team at World in 2050 and Diplomatic Courier is like really excited to do. We're actually looking at creating a hub for ethical, like I say, unheard ethical AI voices, but those that are really truly interested in impact over making a profit, impact and making a profit at the same time, because I don't think that they have to be separated. I think they can coexist together.
No, I feel like they totally can. There's nothing wrong with doing both, but being lifting up the humanity first.
Yes.
So with that said, I love you kind of transitioned us to it. World in 2050. Like, talk to me more about, I know you're trying to solve big problems. What's that look like? Talk to me about it.
Oh man. So this is like such a passion point to me, because I think, like I said earlier, you know, it was when I looked around and saw the problem that was in the walls of these corporates and the hiring process, right? If you look around, if you think about, you know, our ecosystem, right? And I say like the ecosystem right now includes our world, right? But like one day, what will it include? Will it include other planets? Like whoever knows, right? Like what the future looks like. But there's a few things that we do know that are kind of major problems that could cause what our world looks like in 2050 to maybe not be so good. I think we all have been hearing a lot of things about climate change. You know, I talk and you hear me talk about sort of this, like where education is going and sort of this future of focusing on skills as part of the equation. And then there's some other sort of foundational problems or, what we call mega trends that are shaping what our world will look like. And we actually want to create almost this new ecosystem that I talk about, which is like these impact. And like, not only do we want to be successful financially as like our community of people that are coming together, but we really have a strong focus on impact and what our world will look like. And how can we uplift and support each other? How can we come together and solve problems together, create uncommon partnerships, right? Like, instead of creating the wheel, why can't we just work together? Why can't we take what I'm working on and what you're working on and like make 1 + 1 11 instead of 2, right? And so that's kind of the big thing.
I'm a believer in that the exponential, when we come together and collaborate. I know you do talk a lot about the future of work and skills. So one of the things I did see in the world in 2050, the future workplace cares more about skills. So talk to me about that and your thoughts on the skills economy.
Yeah. Well, just like any major problem, it's always sort of like layers of like an onion, right? Like, once you peel back one, you're like, what about that? And sort of as I described in the hiring process, right? There's not just one problem. There is a set of problems, right? There are people that are making these decisions. There are processes in these organizations that are causing barriers. There's technology that's causing barriers. And I think of that as a whole. And so the idea is the community that's really, we are multidisciplinary communities. So like, we actually interact across all of these megatrends, but that particular megatrend is finding ways where we can support organizations that are doing really innovative creations. And that could be to solve the layers of problems, right? Because there's like a multitude of things, challenges, if you will, that we are trying to solve for. And how do we find those little gold nuggets and get it the support it needs? Sometimes that's financing to grow the business. Sometimes that's just a partnership with another business where they offer in kind. Sometimes it's advising, right? Like, there's all different ways, but making sure that these people, these individuals have time together to learn and grow and start to figure out how to solve some of those problems. So we do a lot of like leadership retreats, or innovation retreats, I guess you could call them, where we have like a program. We're not like off grid, but kind of that concept where we go together. We have a set of days together where we're working, we create sort of a program of what we're working on. And then we really like dig in deep and move something really fast over like a 3 to 5 day period. And that work then continues more virtually with some like in-person moments throughout the year. And sometimes that leads to, it could just be a group of totally separate startups coming together to kind of like help each other go faster. It could be startups are created out of it, right? Like, there's so many different things that happen. I think it's sort of an out of the box kind of concept of how to figure out different ways to tackle these challenges, as opposed to just like, I could go out there and create a company that does like a specialty chat for teachers and I could make a lot of money, right? Like, I could do that. But that's not the kind of people that we're getting together. The kind of people that we're getting together is like, actually, we want to solve for a challenge and also create the company that's going to go out and make money.
I like it. What would you advise, like, for our educators who are thinking about, say, skills and lifting that up? When you say like the future of work, like they care more about the skills, like, are there any insights or anything that you've gained from World in 2050 that you would say, hey, you should do more of this in your classroom as it relates to skills?
Yeah. I mean, I think in higher education in particular, we can't be scared of skills, right? Because it doesn't mean that education isn't worthwhile. It doesn't mean that, your job as a guide, as a teacher is going to go away. It's just understanding what you're teaching your students. And the thing is, I think education in the past used to be to create great citizens, right? And only a certain group of citizens could afford, right, to go to school. But education is very different today, right? Like it is ongoing all the time. I would say if I was a teacher today, the things that I would want to incorporate in is to make sure I'm understanding what things I'm teaching my students are applicable in the words of skills to whatever it is that they want to do in their life, whether they're going out to be an employee of an organization, whether they're going out to be an entrepreneur, whatever that is, help them understand what this experience is bringing them, and also incorporate other external, I say project work, but really truly hands-on doing. Because I think of learning in the strongest way, especially when we're saying, like, I'm teaching you a skill. You not only have to, all of your senses have to be a part of that learning process. I have to read it. I have to but I have to process it and I have to practice it. And I have to practice it in the environment that it could possibly be used in. And that could be as simple as going and building homes with Habitat for Humanities. That could be as simple as think there's so many things that don't actually have to cost additional money that could be brought in. But then every professor, teacher has to think about, what are the skills that we're learning from this? And how do I show you those skills so that you can go out and communicate that to whoever you need to communicate that to?
Wow. That was good, Kelly. That was so good. I mean, that was so good and so insightful. And you uplifted so many things of the learning by doing. That's something that was a trigger for me with it was a topic of conversation in a previous podcast with a guest, Pat Brown, who spoke a lot about learn by doing. And I feel like that's been a common theme here in our conversation today as well. Great conversation, Kelly. For anyone who is interested in connecting with you, learning more about your work, maybe bringing you in for a keynote or something like that, how do we connect with Kelly?
It's super easy. Just kellyryanbailey.com. And I have all of my contact information on there. So please feel free to reach out. I would, any way that I can help. And by the way, Sylvester, on that last note, just to say that is one of the reasons I think why I enjoyed our first conversation so much, because you are really doing a lot of these things too in your work. And I think that resonates so much with me and all of the people that you're out there changing lives, and you're not only changing their lives, and that is what we all think about, right? We're also changing like generations to come. We're changing their families. We're changing their communities. Like this has a massive network effect. I hope we can all think about that. If you're a teacher, whatever it is that you are doing professionally or personally, if we can start to think through what we're doing is actually so meaningful, whatever it is.
Wow. Thank you for that. And you're so right with knowing that we're not doing this for ourselves, but we are doing this for a greater world, to see the good things that can come from us humans working together to empower the next generation. So listen, everyone, thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. I highly recommend that you connect with Kelly and the work that she's doing. Follow her if you want to live in the future as Kelly does about what's happening now and next. She's your go-to person on that. Kelly, thank you so much for your time today. To all our listeners, please like this episode, share it with a friend. Don't be selfish. And remember, you don't have to be great to get started, but you have to get started to be great. Peace.